Hello and welcome to Exposed News Outlet, where we shed light on topics that matter the most. I'm your host, Andrea. Today, we're discussing domestic terrorism and specifically from gun violence and political violence and the radical right. But before we get into today's video, if I could just ask for you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and remember to like the video if it speaks to you. Really helps to get my message out to the algorithms, so thank you. It's particularly difficult when they censor the facts and push the propaganda, right? Also, for those who are interested, I'll leave the link for our fundraiser as we grow our platform. And without further ado, let's get to the video.
If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. The Civil Rights Act was a mistake. More cops should be around your neighborhood. Why do blacks have a broken family? White person were to come up and say, you know, black America really needs to get its act together and stop sleeping around all the time, and it needs to actually have enough.
Why would you?
Because it's true. When blacks in America did not have the same rights they had today, they were less murderous. There was less break-ins. Black America is worse than it has been in the last 80 years. What percentage of young blacks have both a mom and a dad raising them? Of course we pander to blacks. They're in every TV commercial. And they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. If I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? Things got worse since the Civil Rights Act. More violent, less fathers around, poorer.
Why are we making racist jokes?
Well, look, it's a comedian that was put up on stage. Yeah, what do you expect? But I mean, man, can you take a joke?
You should be kissing the ground with gratitude, because you're right. You are not in Africa, and you should be thankful you're not in Africa. Certain skin color now gets their own summertime celebration. It's now become a racial complaining day. BLM, and remember what BLM stands for: burn, loot, and murder. America is poorer today than before we tried to start to help them. Black women married the government and divorced the men that they were once with.
Happy Juneteenth. It should not be a federal holiday.
Half of all prisoners are black.
Exactly.
So blacks commit more crime. They commit more murders. They commit more arsons. They commit more kidnappings. It's not a profiling when it comes to that. Blacks are far more likely to commit crimes than any other group. See a black pilot, you wonder, boy, is that person there because they earned it or because they were placed there? When blacks in America did not have the same rights they had today, they were less murderous.
Death toll likely would not have been as high if it wasn't for DEI.
Black culture has collapsed the last 60 years. Systemic racism stuff is a bunch of rubbish. Instead, it's systemic bad choices.
Do you feel that systemic racism isn't real?
Of course not.
How do you feel about the black community receiving reparations?
I'm against that. Yeah.
With the George Floyd protests,
Riots. We have a supply and demand issue with racism in our country. We have an incredibly low supply of racism and an incredible demand to try to fulfill it. So we've created racism where it doesn't exist.
When I was being schooled, we have spent an entire month on slavery. Totally get it. Terrible thing. But we spent so little time on the brilliance of the founders and what they've created.
Is it about contemplating the good, the true, and the beautiful? Or is it about being a gangbanger and trying to get as much money and sleep with as many girls? Time for us to stop listening to rap music and this degenerate hip-hop stuff.
Can you clarify your definition of critical race theory?
Call everything racist till you control it.
And we decided to basically usher in the Civil Rights Act as a new anti-racist dogma, creed, and I find something fundamentally wrong with that.
What would you say is the biggest non-issue that people make out to be a massive issue?
Okay, great. So I would say
it's not a surprise what I'd say, racism.
Charlie Kirk was killed by a meme. Let me explain. Friday morning, a 22-year-old from Utah named Tyler Robinson was taken into custody by law enforcement in connection with the killing of right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk. And right now, mainstream media, law enforcement, and random internet trolls are scouring the web for proof that Robinson is connected to some sort of larger political ideology that may explain why he carried out the shooting. Was he a leftist or an anti-fascist who was angry at Kirk for his years of spreading incendiary right-wing rhetoric? Was Robinson a member of the Gen Z extremist movement, the Groypers, who believed that Kirk was a shill and a sellout and was blocking a more extreme version of white nationalism from taking root in America? Was Robinson connected to the Com Network and the 764 offshoot, which groom young people in chat rooms and typically use conflicting political messages to cause as much chaos as possible when they carry out mass shootings? Possibly most likely of all, was Robinson someone with incoherent political beliefs and an obsession with edgy internet humor? But what do we know about the bullets that Robinson allegedly used to carry out the attack? The bullet that reportedly struck and killed Kirk had "Notices bulge, ooh, what's this" written on its casing. It's a reference to a bit of furry role play that went viral many years ago. It doesn't mean that Robinson is a furry. It's just become part of the internet lexicon in the years since it first went viral. The unfired bullet casings had other phrases written on them, including "Hey fascist, catch up, right, down, down. Oh, Bella Chow, chow, chow. And if you read this, you're gay, LMAO." The first message is a reference to the satirically fascist video game Helldivers 2, and the arrow combination triggers the most powerful bomb attack in the game. The second message is a reference to the Italian folk song Bella Ciao, which has become more popular after it was used in the hit Netflix show Money Heist. The song also features in the video game Far Cry 6. The third bullet casing message is boilerplate edgelord speak. It's meant to troll law enforcement officers who might be investigating the attack. But his alleged use of internet brain rot is notable. This kind of content is basically the waters that young people swim in now, which is what is so existentially terrifying about our current political moment. We have let school shootings in America persist long enough that we have created a culture where kids grow up seeing them as a path towards fame and glory, another viral moment that they can use to gain notoriety, a meme that they can deploy. And many young extremists don't believe in the right and left spectrum that we've relied on to make sense of the political chaos of our current moment. Instead, for them, it's much simpler: order and chaos. If you're trying to derive any meaning from these bullet casings right now, you are firmly on the side of order, which makes you their enemy. My name is Ryan Broderick. I'm the host of Courier's podcast Panic World, and I write a newsletter called Garbage Day. And you can follow both of those if you want more analysis like this. We'll be following this story closely as it develops over the next few weeks.
Those men with flags and tactical gear storming the Capitol. You've heard the rhetoric. We'll stop the steal. Take our country back. What you might not realize is that those groups didn't just vanish. They reorganized. They radicalized, and in January 2025, in one sweeping move, the president granted mass clemency, effectively freeing thousands who were convicted for that attack on January 6th in the attempted coup, where actually more than, I believe, 5 people died that day. Yeah, there were several deaths that day, and then also more later on from suicide from the event, because it was so traumatic for the Metro Police that were responding and trying to hold back, and protect the elected officials. It was just chaos. And ironically, he refused to call in the National Guard then, but now he wants to invade these cities when they're not wanted. So go figure.
Could have used them on January 6th, by the way, our National Guard, to stop Trump's insurrectionists from maiming our Capitol Police. But Trump told us for hours, members of Congress of the United States, the institution of the Constitution, you're on your own. Even as Speaker McCarthy implored him to stop the mob. No National Guard were called out immediately. Later, he told the insurrectionists, the criminals, those who pled guilty to crimes, you're pardoned. Is that tough on crime?
When he granted them clemency and pardoned those terrorists, that changed everything. Why this matters? This isn't abstract. The Department of Justice, the FBI, and federal courts spent years building cases that proved planning, coordination, and yes, seditious conspiracy by groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. These were not random crowds. They were organized networks with chains of command. DOJ press releases on Proud Boys and Oath Keepers convictions. Since Trump's first term, several overlapping moments have emerged or grown. Militias and paramilitary networks, white nationalist propaganda outfits, younger fight club style cells, and influencer-led outfits. Think your Groypers around like Nick Fuentes, etc., who pressure mainstream conservatives they don't all agree with. They don't all agree with each other. In fact, they fight. But they share a vision to overturn what they see as a corrupt democracy, to build parallel power structures.
I've never seen anything like it.
Then the testimony of Capitol Police Officer Caroline Edwards.
What I saw was just a war scene.
And the moments rioters toppled the barricades, knocking Edwards to the ground. After regaining consciousness, she got back up, rushing to help other officers hold the line.
You know, I was catching people as they fell. You know, it was carnage. It was chaos.
Documentary filmmaker Nick Quested testified too, embedded with the Proud Boys as they and others stormed the Capitol.
I documented the crowd turn from protesters to rioters to insurrectionists.
The committee showing evidence that Trump's closest advisors knew he was peddling lies.
Welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show. This is Vice President J.D. Vance. Joining me now is Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff, dear friend of mine and dear friend of Charlie Kirk's. And before I get into the nitty-gritty of what I wanted to talk with Stephen about, you know, there's a lot of questions about the investigation, where we are in the investigation. I want to be respectful to the FBI's process, but just know that we are on top of this, and the entire administration is trying to do as much as possible to find everything that we can about what led to this, about how we got here, and of course, ultimately, how an assassin took Charlie's life. I wanted to zoom out with Stephen a little bit and talk about all of the ways that we're trying to figure out how to prevent this festering violence that you see on the far left from becoming even more and more mainstream. A lot of people are very worried about how we got here in the first place. And you have the crazies on the far left who are saying, oh, Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance, they're going to go after constitutionally protected speech. No, we're going to go after the NGO network that foments, facilitates, and engages in violence. That's not okay. Violence is not okay in our system, and we want to make it less likely that that happens. Walk me through, at a high level, like what you and I have been working on, what the whole administration has been working on to try to make sure that we don't reward and promote this craziness.
The organized doxing campaigns, the organized riots, the organized street violence, the organized campaign dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging that's designed to trigger and incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate the violence. It is a vast domestic terror movement. And with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. And we will do it in Charlie's name.
The horrific killing of Charlie Kirk igniting right-wing calls for a crackdown on the left. And this afternoon, Vice President J.D. Vance, the presumptive future leader of the Republican Party, took the mic.
People on the left are much likelier to defend and celebrate political violence. This is not a both sides problem. If both sides have a problem, one side has a much bigger and malignant problem, and that is the truth we must be told.
That was the vice president guest hosting the late Charlie Kirk's podcast. What you just heard that the left has a problem that the right doesn't have. That was a recurring theme of what he said today. Vance also spoke, though, about his personal experiences with hostility from the left. He told all of us about a family visit he took to an amusement park.
There was a loud and very vocal minority that would shout at my children, who were 8, 5, and 3, whenever they got the opportunity. "You should disown your dad, you little shit," one middle-aged woman yelled at my 5-year-old. "Tell the Secret Service to protect the Constitution, not your father," screamed another. After Charlie died, one of his friends and one of our senior White House staffers had left-leaning operatives in his neighborhood passing out leaflets telling people what he looked like and where he lived, encouraging neighbors to harass him or, God forbid, to do worse. While he was mourning his dead friend, he and his wife had to worry about the political terrorists drawing a big target on the home he shares with his young children. Are these people violent? I hope not. But are they guilty of encouraging violence? You damn well better believe it. We can thank God that most Democrats don't share these attitudes, and I do, while acknowledging that something has gone very wrong with a lunatic fringe, a minority, but a growing and powerful minority on the far left.
Minority, lunatic fringe. The vice president there acknowledging that it's not most people on the left who are shouting at children or celebrating an assassination. Still, Vance went on to argue that extremism on the left is, quote, growing and powerful. And if you listen to what he says next, it really makes the path out of this wilderness seem all but impossible to find.
There is no unity with people who scream at children over their parents' politics. There is no unity with someone who lies about what Charlie Kirk said in order to excuse his murder. There is no unity with someone who harasses an innocent family the day after the father of that family lost a dear friend. There is no unity with the people who celebrate Charlie Kirk's assassination. And there is no unity with the people who fund these articles, who pay the salaries of these terrorist sympathizers, who argue that Charlie Kirk, a loving husband and father, deserved a shot to the neck because he spoke words with which they disagree.
The mass pardon, the turning point, January 20th, 2025. The White House issued a clemency proclamation that covered nearly 1,600 people convicted or charged in connection with January 6th and commuted sentences for key leaders. That wasn't one or two pardons. It was a policy decision with strategic consequence. The effect: people who've been convicted of assaulting officers, obstructing the vote count, even seditious conspiracy, walked back into the public life with reputations rehabilitated and new political capital. That's not just symbolic, it's operational. Not to mention, some were even given key roles in his administration, which is crazy.
Details uncovered by the House committee investigating the January 6th insurrection. Using never-before-seen video and testimony from Trump's inner circle.
I made it clear I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was.
The committee insisting it was Trump's repeated false claims of a stolen election that provoked the mob.
What operational looks like.
They were peaceful people. These were
militias training and planning. Before January 6th, prosecutors proved something alarming. These groups weren't just online trolls. Some organized armed quick reaction forces, stockpiled gear, and coordinated on radios and encrypted apps. Prosecutors found explicit plans to use force to stop the peaceful transfer of power. That's what makes them domestic violent extremists. DHS and the FBI have repeatedly said domestic violence extremists are among the most significant threats to homeland security, especially around political events. And unfortunately, the person in the White House is only adding fuel to the fire at this time. DHS domestic violence extremists equals top physical threat. DHS Homeland Threat Assessment. NTAS bulletins and GAO domestic terrorism report. How they're organized and why it's so dangerous. Venn diagram showing overlaps here. Here's the pattern. Decentralized cells plus online radicalization plus real-world training equals a resilient network. Even when the leaders are jailed, the ideas, the tactics, and the recruiters survive. Some groups evolved to be less overtly labeled. New names, local chapters, social clubs, but their tactics, recruitment, paramilitary, training, intimidation don't change. And when those networks believe they'll be shielded by presidential pardons, when convictions can be wiped away, what incentive is there not to escalate? That's the risk of impunity. It lowers the cost of violence.
Stock all over the world. Over the past 4 years, Kamala Harris and the radical Democrat Party have led a war on law enforcement in America. They're against you so strongly. As a result, families that do everything right and carry this country on their shoulders have watched helplessly as their communities dissolved all around them. Kamala Harris and the radical liberals force anarchy on the American people while they live in safety, in many cases behind walls. You know that? Nancy Pelosi has a big wall wrapped around her house. Of course, it didn't help too much with the problem she had, did it? But she had a big wall wrapped around her house. But then she says, we don't want to, you have no idea what it was to get the wall done. Kamala Harris opposed me, Nancy Pelosi, everybody, the Democrats largely, not all of them, but they largely opposed it, but we got to build act.
The internal fights. Not a single army, but many feuds. These groups fight with each other too. The Groypers mock some of the conservatives for being soft. Active clubs accuse others of cowardice. Militia fragments argue over strategy. Go electoral or go militant. Those splits create instability. And sometimes those schisms make violence more likely because splinter cells seek to prove themselves. Epstein files and political tension. Why investigations make this worse? Now add another unstable ingredient. High-level scandal. In 2025, breaking news that just this weekend, Bloomberg obtained more than 18,000 emails from Jeffrey Epstein's personal account. Material that reopens questions about who was connected to Epstein and who might have been protected. When powerful people are implicated, the pressure to control narratives intensifies, and extremists thrive on chaos. Some activists are already weaponizing the Epstein revelations, claiming that investigations threaten national elites and pushing conspiracies that lead to radicalization. At the same time, there are real debates about releases of transcripts, for example, Ghislaine Maxwell's interviews, and whether political actors will use the documents to shield allies or to retaliate. New Epstein emails, political fallout. Real human cost, what this means for everyday people. This isn't about abstract lawfare It's about your life. These networks push agendas, rollbacks on healthcare, attacks on reproductive rights, intimidation of schools, and harassment of LGBTQ people. They target institutions, they intimidate officials, and they erode trust in elections. Rebuilding that trust will take a generation if we don't act now.
After sleeping on the text exchange released by the prosecutors, you guys, I just want to say I'm calling bullshit on it. I do not think these are legit, and I'm not alone. There are bipartisan calls right now that what the prosecutors received from the FBI is total bullshit. It's not making sense. Put this up, Kylie. I am still okay, my love. Now, I have a 22-year-old son. He doesn't speak this way. A little while longer yet is another quote from the letter. Till we died of old age. Grab my unseen. A bit over a week. And then he refers to a squad car. He uses the phrase circle back. He refers to his car as a vehicle. This is just, there's something incredibly fishy about this. I do not trust Kash Patel's FBI. He's a conspiracy theorist. Dan Bongino is a conspiracy theorist. They had podcasts where they trash talked the FBI for 4 years, which was their audition to get this job. Their number one thing is that they are Trump loyalists. I'm just not buying that this kid texted, ever since the election, my dad's been hardcore MAGA. If he and this roommate were in a romantic relationship, why do you have to say that? That would be assumed. Why are you giving all these details about changing clothes? I'm just telling you guys, it stinks to high heaven. I'm not buying it. I don't trust anything that this administration puts out. They immediately, here's one of the main reasons as well, aside from knowing that 22-year-olds don't text like this. One of the main reasons is immediately after Charlie Kirk's murder, there was a organized, coordinated messaging attack on the right, that this was left-wing ideology, that these were leftists that did this. And then within 12 hours, it had swollen into left-wing transgender terror cells. That's what, before they even had this guy. And here's another tell in this letter, in the text exchange. He says, the roommate allegedly says, I thought they caught the guy. And then Robinson responds, that was some old crazy dude. So let me get this straight. You're worried about the rifle that you reassembled while you're changing clothes and you're texting all these details to your roommate, but you're also logged into your phone analyzing, and you know that some guy was picked up and then released. I don't know that I even knew that at that time. And I'm not trying to allegedly stash a murder weapon. I'm calling bullshit. I don't believe this for a second.
I agree with you. It's too convenient, given what you said. The immediate narrative was it was a leftist trans person, but he didn't fit the narrative. White, Christian, MAGA, Mormon. It did not fit their narrative. And that's never stopped Donald Trump from lying or corruption before. So why should it now?
And moving along, I want to highlight this tweet from Hassan Piker. He says, half the right thinks the messages are fake because it doesn't implicate the trans person. So there's a bunch of people that believe that this is wrong because the messages provide cover for the alleged trans roommate. The other half think the shooter is a patsy because it was Israel that killed Charlie Kirk. Hassan, a leftist, says, I will say the text messages are too perfectly plugging holes for the investigators and unnatural. And what I'm seeing here in Hassan's tweet, you guys, is bizarre bipartisan support. And to fight this fascist regime, it's going to require this. It is going to require people on the far right that have these podcasts and people on the far left to save our Constitution and our First Amendment. And this is the exact same thing that all of these bots and the administration are trying to prevent us from doing. Let's hear from Matt Walsh what he says about this. This is a far-right anti-trans nut job. I am leaning very strongly towards the theory that this text exchange was scripted as a way to absolve the boyfriend. So his big thing is he's anti-trans. It's almost exactly what Walter White did at the end of Breaking Bad. This feels like a strategy they cooked up from watching too much TV. So this is the far-right anti-trans movement. He's calling bullshit on it. Hassan Piker's calling bullshit on it. Jennifer and Pumps are calling bullshit on it. I'm calling bullshit. Next up, we have Steve Bannon of the War Room. He's not buying it. Play the clip.
As is presented in Utah, I'm not buying all of it. I'm particularly not buying those text messages. It just seems too stilted, too much like a script, actually a bad script.
We've always said that this administration is incompetent. And this is the highlight of this incompetence. But what's so sad about this is incredibly dangerous. This is a wild time to live in the United States, and they have eroded the institution so much that within 9 months, I don't believe an effing word coming out of the FBI. Not one word, because Cash Money Patel is blindly loyal to the cult leader. And then behind the cult leader, you've got the failed drag queen, smoky eye sociopath, Little Smokey. And then it gets even darker. You get to Palantir, you get Elon Musk, you get to these very dark forces. There are people on the far right that see this. They see that people that are more powerful, with more money, with more nefarious intents than Matt Walsh and Steve Bannon, they see that they are sucking up to Trump, and they have the bank account that Trump is impressed with. And so there is a very weird time right now where we all need to focus on, because I believe we're at a precipice. I believe it's going to take some level of bipartisan voices to save this democracy. And I'm starting to see that this could possibly happen, because if the right wing is calling bullshit on the FBI that they wanted to take over, this is a window that we cannot close the door on. Here's Candace Owens. She's from the Israel camp.
Messages are clearly doctored, is what I would say. They're doctored. Now, they could decide why they're doing that. Tyler's being forthcoming. We're protecting him in some capacity. I find that to be unacceptable. Okay? Unacceptable. I want every single text message. I want timestamps. It is conspicuous that you are not telling us when this was sent, because it sounds like it's when the campus is on lockdown and he's got to go back and he's got to clean up. And then all of a sudden we're in the next day when his dad is getting clued in after the picture's been released. They're not telling us that. Okay. And you have a right to be a little bit uncomfortable about that, because I'm a lot of bit uncomfortable about that. We need full answers.
Okay. So you have exactly what Hassan said. More of her clip, she goes into thinking that this is a false flag from Israel, that the Israelis are all over it. You have the anti-trans people, the Matt Walsh, that think that it was that their whole narrative the last few days have been that it is a trans terror cell that was activated, these sleeper cells of trans people, which if you know trans people, you know they're just trying to live and not draw attention to themselves because everybody's so fucking mean to them. And so then I think the truth is this. I think you have an completely incompetent and corrupt FBI that's 1000% beholden to Kanks. And they are desperate to make this narrative fit that this is left wing, because they want to erode civil rights. And here's why they want to do it. Kanks is tapped out, you guys. He's working on retrofitting his private plane that was a gift from Qatar. He's working on his ballroom. He's redecorating the Oval Office. He has this new patio club that he's opened up. He didn't give a shit about all this stuff. But Lil Smokey is there, chomping at the bit, perched and ready to pounce on this presidency. He has no riz. He cannot keep the cult together. So they need to have all of the power consolidated in the executive before Kanks, who is like 80, 90 years old. Biology is going to catch up with him. Another thing that's interesting, Ruth Ben-Ghiat has talked about how when the dictator starts showing signs of weakness health-wise, the cult starts eroding. So keep an eye on that. We have the bruised hands that are cover-up. We have the swollen ankles. We have the clear dementia that this man that we're seeing, that he sometimes doesn't know what's going on, a lot of the time doesn't know. And so you see these other actors around him putting things into place. And I think that this is a time that this is so dangerous because these right-wing podcasters exist because of shit talking, trash talking. Is it crazy? Is it insane? Yes, but this is a free country. It is. We exist over here. We try earnestly our best to report facts and then our opinions on those facts. And I'm not accepting this shit as facts. And here's another tweet of some libs analyzing, or leftists analyzing this. I try not to be a conspiracy theorist, but I have a really hard time believing in a short text exchange. The alleged shooter makes his confession, confirms location of the weapon, confirms the type of the weapon, confirms it was wrapped in a towel, confirms his motive, exonerates the decoy, George Zinn. That's what I think too. He exonerates that guy, admits to the bullet engraving. So he even says in this text exchange, remember when I was engraving on the bullets? Like he's covering up too many holes. This is not somebody who's on the run trying to get away with murder. Remember my dad's super MAGA. Remember when I spend all my spare time engraving bullets that I'm later going to use for a murder? He confirms the wardrobe change. He confirms how long he's been planning it, discloses the existence and location of a now destroyed, pre-written confession note, randomly tells his boyfriend that his dad is a diehard MAGA, as if he wouldn't already know given the nature of their relationship, and is worried about his dad/grandpa being upset if he doesn't come home with the rifle, not the fact that he just used it to commit a murder. Not to mention a 22-year-old terminally online Zoomer using phrases like squad car, drop point, swept the area, my vehicle, till I died of old age, my old man. I'm not buying it. I think this is complete and total bullshit. I think this is the exact FBI that Trump wanted. He wanted to destroy the enemy from within. He campaigned on it. One of the enemies from within was a FBI department that I believe tried to be truthful and find facts, and he put two dipshit podcasters in charge of the FBI. I'm calling bullshit from top to bottom on this whole thing.
Two things have stuck out to me about this whole thing. In terms of that tweet, the written confession that has disappeared, that to me spells cover up a mile away. Because if it was, I am a trans person that inscribed bullets against Donald Trump, it would be wall-to-wall coverage on every news station. And I also look at this and I think, here's the FBI. The most obvious answer cannot be the true one because it does not fit the narrative that Donald Trump and the right wants, exactly for the reasons you mentioned. They refused to allow this to be a kid that was too online, that got radicalized, that goes right down the data, 75% right-wing extremism. They do not want to do that and entertain that because it doesn't fit their narrative. So this whole thing, like you said, this is a prosecution's dream. Never does the defendant confess to everything in a text message.
This is a defense lawyer's dream because they have just released all of this evidence and tainted a jury pool. And I'm just going to say this. Does this kid, does he get a good lawyer? Does he make it out of prison? Now they're already saying he's on suicide watch. We knew what happened to Jeffrey Epstein under Trump's care. I question everything about this. And I always go back to immediately after Charlie Kirk was murdered, there was a coordinated across podcasters, from the government to politicians, a coordinated within an hour or two blaming the entire thing on this imaginary left-wing transgender terror cell, because they know that's the one thing. You have the entire country falling apart. This man is pulling underwater on immigration. That was his big thing. This man is underwater on everything. I don't trust any information coming out about this whatsoever. And here's why. Put up the post. Ron Filipkowski tweeted this with no words. And for the listener, this is Kash Patel, who spells his name K$H. And here he is in a camouflage skull with a Santa hat. This is the guy that's running the FBI. This is it. This is a wholly unqualified conspiracy theorist podcaster running the FBI. I don't believe any of it. And within my doubts, there are doubts on the far right, the people that I played here. I feel that we are in such a dangerous time. We did an episode a couple of days ago discussing Stephen Miller's plans. Everybody's heard what Pam Bondi's been saying. Everybody's heard what Lil Smokey's been saying. Everybody knows what Donald Trump's been saying. We're at a time where if we are going to save this country, we are going to have to unite with people that we agree about the First Amendment with to save it. And that's going to be having some very strange bedfellows. But at the end of the day, we are all Americans. And it's interesting to me that all of these foreign bots, and one other thing that I just have to say before we sign off. Do you remember during the press conferences, they said they were working with foreign intelligence? That was really interesting. So I plan to do more research on that so that I am completely read on that. But I just think this stinks to high heaven. I'm calling bullshit, complete, total, utter bullshit on all of it. I don't buy a word of it.
What we can do. So what do we do? Here are practical steps you can take. Share this video. Contact your representatives. Support watchdog journalism and independent journalists. Support nonprofits that monitor extremism and defenders of civil rights and liberties. And get involved in local election protection. Demand transparency. Release relevant documents, responsibility, and let investigators, journalists, and courts do their work. Not vigilance. Share credible reporting and cited sources. Volunteer at the polls and support election workers. Support journalists and watchdogs doing Freedom of Information Act work. FOIA. Hold officials accountable in local and national offices. They built militant networks. They were given clemency. They're organizing again. That's not conspiracy. It's documented. You don't become a functioning democracy by staying silent. If you value your healthcare, your kids' schools, your right to vote, you need to pay attention and you need to act now. We all need to stand up together and demand accountability and change. Wake up, share, act. Thank you. Please like, follow, and share. Subscribe if you haven't already. Join our Truth Tribe. And thank you for watching. Stay safe out there. Thank you for watching Exposed News Outlet.